lot of inertia built around those kind of ideas. They call it reoperations, I think. But that's an example of things that we can be looking at in these next years as we try and find smarter ways to manage with our existing infrastructure. And then finally, the main flood protection piece of it is the Corps has to move out with its flood control authorities. It's got two in California, one on the Bay Delta, levees and islands feasibility study, and then another integrated study for the whole Central Valley. We have to go ahead and start that comprehensive look at the whole valley that incorporates the pieces and then ends up with solutions that are solutions. I'll quickly just talk about sort of the environmental part of this. I would say that in general, we have I don't know if it's famous, it's certainly a notable project, a flood control project in California in the Napa River. And it's got some, people are interested in it because the Corps didn't put in its riprap channel, it didn't put in its concrete line ditch, it was more natural, it took more advantage of the natural floodplain and used the natural floodplain to absorb some of the flows. It was more expensive, and it was a new step for the Corps. I believe that nature provides surfaces that are greatly undervalued in the way we think about these things. I'm aware of the project up in New York City where they essentially, in lieu of a big wastewater or drinking water filtration system, they basically bought the watershed just using the natural filtration of the watershed, and it was billions of dollars less expensive to do that. In other words, there is a value to the natural system that in that case was for water quality. In the Napa River, the value I think is flood protection. As we talked a little bit yesterday at one of the sessions I attended, was that there's a value in natural areas to absorb the floods, and if you build on those, you take that away and you make the floods more difficult to deal with. So trying to understand sort of how to value natural places, a concept called environmental services or ecological services, is something that is also part of the principles and guidelines as to how the Corps, when it's looking at a problem, how does it weight and value the more natural approaches to the problem. I think there's a huge nexus between environmental restoration and floodplain management. I almost wonder if they're not two parts of the same question, that as you look at dealing with floodplains, how do you do that in a way that concurrently is dealing with some of the natural nature and restoring some of the natural functions that we've lost. I think more and more people are coming to that, more and more local folks, when they're saying, we don't want the Standard Corps project, we want a different kind of project. With respect to climate change, to me, I talked a little bit about this and just say that it's not just about sea level rise. It's about changing rainfall patterns, snow patterns. I believe it's changing the way water comes to us. It changes there's this term called stationarity, that we're going to analyze a problem based upon data from the last period of record that we have in terms of using that data to predict the future. And it's just not working out that way. The rainfall patterns are changing, and while we don't know, this is the uncertainty part, we don't know where that's going, we at least have to start looking at the problems in the light of those uncertainties and trying to solve those problems in the face of those uncertainties. All this gets to the slide that I didn't make. I think some of you participated in the making of this. General Don Riley and others came up with this. It's just sort of how do we think about risk? And the part I like about it from the get-go was that there's only one little part for the core, the structural part maybe, down there at the bottom, and the rest of it is I guess FEMA is there on the insurance, so there's a little federal part there, but the rest of it is largely local government and not the federal role. I believe that this is the only way that we're going to be able to resolve the enormous floodplain management issues that we have. We have to be willing to be more flexible in the way we work with you. We have to not have to say we're going to optimize this structural facility, but rather we're going to optimize the system approach, and we're going to fit the structural piece in along with the insurance, along with all the other pieces into an integrated system. And that's a different way for the Corps. It'll take us a while to sort of get in the rhythm. I don't think there's any other way. I mean, I think we have to figure out, this may not be exactly the right codes on the stair steps, but it makes the point that we're all in this together, and it has to start from the bottom up. The final thing I'll just mention is, before I leave the slide, I'll just say that one of the pieces since I've come to my job is that I've been most impressed with is the Corps Silver Jacket program. And what the Silver Jackets are, as I understand it, it's a state-driven process. There are 15 states that have sort of signed up. The Corps works with the states. The state has to ask. There are another over 25 states that are considering it. They basically, after a flood event, they go in there and they do a little sort of a forensic on what happened, what's the problem, how do we solve it. To me, it's exactly the kind of bottoms-up solutions, like John was talking about, that we then have to figure out how to take that and come up with the policies, either new policies, regulations, or statutes that allow us to be more effective in finding the solutions. I'll just end with, I'm getting the sign here. See, I've got to thank you. Two of the questions for John that I wanted to just quickly mention. One was on collaboration, and I would just say that my experience in the Everglades, I mentioned my experience in California, the Anacostia River, the question on the political differences and how do you do this. I mean, my experience is it's not simple. It's not people's natural starting point. But when you get people in the room and you say, here's our problem, how do we solve it? There'll be a little bit of venting about, someone's part of the problem. But once everybody's had their chance to have their say, you can get to a point where people can then start working on a solution. Everybody knows that we're in it together. And I'm actually more hopeful on those kinds of problems if we can get, once we can get the forum where people can work together. And I believe the watershed basis is the best way to do that. Now, on the housing question from the back, that was Deputy Secretary Sims, Ron Sims, we have been talking. I went out to Los Angeles, and we're relooking at the Los Angeles River Flood Project. And among other things, they're trying to hook it to some urban renewal, to open up a part of it, to reclaim some areas. And of course, that's a veto in our world. I mean, Corps projects aren't urban renewal. And we'd never get that through OMB, yet it's an incredibly right thing to do. And so we're talking with Ron, and we're trying to get together to figure out sort of this idea of how do we link their programs and authorities with the Corps programs and authorities to come up with ways to have smarter projects. And so that's my message. I'm getting the high sign. I will say thank you all very much.